essentially loose when you just sat there and like cracked up? Like we're like, is this actually happening? Like, is this guy? So I assume you guys hear me loud and clear.
Yeah, everybody looks great. Are we on?
We are live now. Yes, this is a new episode of Eat This, Drink That. We got Ali Khan and Steve Greer. We are doing a Drink That for today with Steve Greer. I got a little messed up on the promo, so please forgive me, you guys. But thanks to all of our new followers and stuff for joining us this previous 5 episodes. So nice to meet you all. Hope you enjoy episode 6. Without any further ado, let's kick it off.
What's up, gents? Ali, Ryan, how is everybody? Everybody's looking really sharp in their collared shirts. I like
Let's talk about that for a second. It's true. Steve, I got to admit that you look like you're ready to sling some pappy to some billionaire on a yacht. But let's talk about Mr. Ryan Crosby breaking tradition with, you've got that great black canvas backdrop that it could scream like extremist YouTube video, or in my mind, I think of it as like death metal rocker guy. And usually there's the t-shirt you're wearing. And it just, to me, it's like, black. You're like that guy back when we used to go to record stores that was like, you ask the person questions and the person's like, I don't understand what you're asking. This is for serious music people, and you're clearly not that. Why don't you go to the mall? Go to the mall. This is an independent record store. Get out.
I like it.
No, you're rocking some checkers.
Going for a nice shirt today. I was so excited for your Eat This, but then Steve reminded me that we switched schedule to Drink That. So
yeah, I apologize to everybody. I'm going to be on the road next week. I'll be in a place where I can participate. I'm just not going to be able to do all this. I can't travel.
Swinging that big old spoon around. Yeah, that requires
I can't travel with all this, and I definitely can't travel with my ice.
Ice.
Devastating. He's coming out swinging. All right, let's. Should we get to work? What's going on, Steve?
So, we have covered a lot in this season already, and we're going to kind of rehash a couple ideas that we've thrown out there. But ahead of basically the last episode of Cocktails, before we get into Ali's cooking next week and then the blind tasting, we're going to talk about styles and all the quality factors and what those really are that contribute to the final style. Why Old Forester tastes like Old Forester. We've talked about a lot of these. Proof in the bottle, the final proof. So this is 100 proof, 50% alcohol. Most of them are 40% alcohol. This is my cocktail whiskey. We've talked about yeast strains, which we don't really know that much about yeast strains, because everybody keeps it a super, super secret. In fact, I was researching some things, and I was reminded the Big Heaven Hill fire in 96 or 97 that just destroyed. I can't even remember how many.
That was a good fire. Heck of a fire, really.
You were kind of saying it like as if we all think about that, awful, momentous day.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. I'm going to look it up, though.
Yeah, and go find the YouTube video of it, because there are just flowing fire streams of bourbon going down.
Whoa, that sounds freaking awesome, like lava.
Yeah, like lava. But they were able to save their yeast strain. They did not lose their original yeast strain. So it's really proprietary. It's a heavily guarded secret. And every distillery has their own yeast strain. It's kind of like rum.
If there was this crazy fire that obviously even made YouTube, right? but like, how did the yeast strain survive? Did they keep it in something like, like when you watch Terminator 2 and they're like, you go into like Skynet, not Skynet, but Cyberdyne systems, and they have the microchip in like some crazy heat-proof glass. Is that what they do with the yeast? Do they keep it in some fireproof thing? Seriously,
I'm assuming it was in a refrigerator. And the refrigerator was inside, probably in the lab area, because all distilleries have a lab area. So it was probably in the internal portion of the distillery. It was the rack houses that burnt down. This was a big shift. Like we talked last week, the Kentucky Bourbon Distillers, KBD, bought a bunch of Heaven Hill juice after the fire. To help get them money. And then they had a bunch of old bourbon that they were bottling in different labels. So back before bourbon had literally caught fire, not the Heaven Hill fire, but in the late...
I'm watching it right now. This is freaking... I don't understand what I'm looking at. Nuts. It looks like a freaking remember all those movies that came out in the 90s about an asteroid hitting Earth? Like 2 came out at the same time. I swear to God, I think I'm watching Deep Impact, and then President Morgan Freeman's like, "The bourbon is all gone, America."
The Heaven Hill Fire of '96 is what we're referring to right now. If you guys look it up on anyone that's live might want to join watching it with us. The Heaven Hill, it says lost 2% of the bourbon, or that's crazy, of the world.
Of the world's bourbon. I think 2% of what Kentucky had aging at that time was lost. But Heaven Hill really recovered. They were, it's still family owned, I believe. Same generation, multi-generational family owned. They were able to build a new distillery, increase production. Ultimately it's a good story, but they saved their yeast strain. So that's one. You got yeast strain. But we have talked about mash bill a lot on this show. Let's talk about
what that is again. Yeast is how you make alcohol. What's the mash bill? Oh, like it's how much corn to whatever?
Yeah, it's the recipe.
Okay.
So let's talk, it has to be 51% corn, remember?
Yes.
But let's talk about the individual grains and what they bring to the table, because we haven't really talked about that. Corn brings sweetness, plain and simple. Just think, corn is sweet. Rye, which is the most common second grain, very common, that brings spice, peppery spice, lemon, a little bit of acidic flavor profile, or palate profile. Wheat, which is kind of the mainstay. Well, it is the mainstay of Maker's Mark, and it's kind of the mainstay of Buffalo Trace. You mentioned Pappy Van Winkle right off the bat. Me on a yacht, showing it. That's a wheated bourbon. Wheat.
That's a wheated shirt.
Yes,
that was the whole point. It's a weeded shirt. That's how I call fancy. Weeded to me is like it's quite weeded, quite fancy. And also, isn't wheat what Scotch is?
No, that's barley, malted barley.
Crap. Never mind.
Irish whiskey.
Steve, we have to learn this stuff.
Irish whiskey. Just since we're on the topic of other whiskeys, Irish whiskey is unmalted and malted barley. So you get 2 flavor profiles from the malted process. So wheat brings a honey flavor, but a really nice, soft, gentle, round palate. And then
wheat brings honey flavor?
Yeah, a little bit of honey.
All right.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that bread commercial from like the 80s or 90s where it was like, and a touch of honey. You know what I mean? It's like that's how they were selling wheat bread. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But because of that bread commercial, I'll choose to believe you. Okay. Wheat tastes like honey, everybody.
Yeah. And then malted barley. Malted barley is really essential. Well, it's there for enzymes, for everything going on in the conversion process. It's really important. For rye whiskeys, almost universally, except for 2 or 3, always add in a little bit of malted barley into the rye recipe so they can get the enzymes working.
So that's there for science. That's what you're saying, not for flavor.
Bingo.
It's there for
But,
science.
And we're talking small portions, like 3 to 6% of the final recipe might be malted barley.
Okay.
So that's a good segue, because from those grains, your mix of how you're developing your recipe really is the final flavor or style component. So mash bill recipes, like I said, Buffalo Trace, they have 2, really, maybe 3 mash bills. They're very secret about it. No one really knows what they are. One is a low rye, so under 10%. One is their high rye, but in no way is it a high rye, because it's
If
only
this
like
is secret, how do you know this?
It leaks out. And a lot of this is guesswork. You can tell by the palate what's going on. And you guys,
Or the booze whisperer.
we're going to talk about this
That's
in 2
impressive.
weeks.
I can taste that wheat, you weedy bastard. But technically, you're not, like you said that Maker's Mark is weedy, but you don't know that.
Yes, no. Now they are very open about their production, just in the same sense of Four Roses, having all that transparency.
Right.
Maker's Mark did really out of necessity, because they came on the scene in the 80s. They wanted to separate themselves from the very traditional brands that
I see.
they wanted to break in. So they said, we are wheated. We don't use rye. We are very soft. We'll talk a little bit more about some of their style indicators, because they have some other things they do. So you got Buffalo Trace with a low rye recipe. You got a Buffalo Trace with a regular recipe, which, the normal recipe is somewhere around 15 to 18% rye. Then you have the wheated recipes, which are your Pappy Van Winkles, Taylor, and Weller. Or no, they don't make Weller. But Pappy Van Winkle is wheated. Maker's is the other wheated recipe. And then your high rye recipes are Woodford Reserve, Blanton's, Four Roses. And Four Roses actually has 2 high rye recipes. One a regular high rye, which is the 15 to 20%. But they also have one that is 35% rye. It is very, very spicy. This Old Forester, just to remind you, is the traditional recipe, around 18%.
Steve, is that the same Old Forester we started the season out with, or is this
okay. Yeah. So I'm using the same bottle because I don't want people judging me on how much I drink. So I am just, we're 3 cocktails out of this bottle so far.
Okay.
Today will be the 4th.
Morning.
This morning. Just checking.
Yeah. I have another
It is
bottle.
noon in Denver, folks. It is noon in Denver, so it's completely
Old Forester comes out.
I have another bottle that I use for my own personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So styles, quality factors. Actually, you know what we should do? Let's make a cocktail. And while we're sipping the cocktail, we will talk about all the other things that we've talked about.
Cool.
I'm really excited for today, because this is back into, we did a whiskey sour version of a whiskey sour where we threw in some apple juice. We've done
Sling.
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 Yeah, the Sling.
The Sling.
Yeah. Whiskey sour.
Nice.
And we started the whole thing off with a traditional Manhattan, and talked about how you can have variations of the Manhattan. Ali made an old fashioned.
Yep. Old fashioned with Ali,
That's right.
This is something I like to drink. So I love Negronis. This is a version of a Negroni that came out of its own world. It wasn't just like, hey, let's throw in some whiskey. I think it's some expats in France. It's called the Boulevardier. It was a magazine or a newspaper, an expat magazine or newspaper. And it's the same 3 ingredients as a Negroni. Well, same profile of ingredients. Instead of gin, though, you're using bourbon. You can use rye for this too, but we're using a high rye recipe. And then Campari, and sweet vermouth. So bitter, sweet, and spice.
Love it.
Now,
dude,
do you guys
whiskey
remember?
Negroni?
Yeah.
Bam! He just dropped a bomb on us on this episode.
It's its own version, has its own name, has its own backstory, and I think it's the 1920s also. It's a Boulevardier. It's not like, someone in the aughts decided, let's make our own version of a Negroni with some bourbon. It's already created.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the ratios of gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth for a Negroni?
I do not. Let me point out that a little bit. We have some episodes of this stuff on our YouTube page. Eat This Drink That YouTube page. We have some discussions about this very drink, and also on our social media, it's ETDT official. So if you guys are tuning in for the first time on Fireside, we have some YouTube videos, about 46 of them, and we cover some drinks like this. So that's why Steve's asking if we remember what the ratio is. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's mostly gin and then everything else.
No, it's a 1-to-1-to-1. 1-to-1-to-1.
Okay.
That's the traditional Negroni recipe with gin. I probably used St. George out of San Francisco. Their gin I really like. And then Campari and sweet vermouth. You can play around with the recipes on this. I don't use a 1-to-1-to-1. I want more bourbon.
Yes.
I made these for friends. So the ratio that I came up with is basically because I made these for people and they're like, I like that one. So it's 1.5 to 3/4 and 3/4.
Okay.
So you're always balancing these two. So sweet vermouth, the Carpano Antica, and the Campari. The bitter and the sweet are always the same ratio. So in this case,
measure in quarters.
So my handy, fun thing that I like to tell people to use instead, a regular jigger has graduations inside. So there's a 1.5. There's an ounce.
Maybe not mine. I think mine's cheap from Kmart. I don't see anything. I just fill it to the rim.
But yeah, there's 3/4 in there. I don't know if you can see that.
Old,
I see it.
Math questions where you have to start pouring certain amounts into each one until you finally end up with 3/4 or one of those riddles.
So if you remember, Ali built his old fashioned in the glass right on top of the ice. Yep. You can do that. I like to stir just a little bit. I should have mentioned right away, you can also serve on the rock. I'm using one rock, but on the rocks or up, and you can use your martini glass for that, the Nick and Nora Coupe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one piece of ice into my
beautiful ice.
Yeah, into my mixing tin. Yeah, expensive. Only that I bought the ice molds and I make it at home.
With filtered water.
Yeah. And honestly, this could be better ice. You can see it's a little bit cloudy. That's, I think, the mineral content.
This is very, very disappointing, Steve. Very disappointing.
We can blame Colorado for that. The mountains.
Oh yeah, I don't use
Coors.
I don't use tap water.
Bath water.
I don't even drink tap water.
Elitist.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's gross. So let's talk about a couple things about keeping things fresh. We have harped on this for a long time. Buy 375s of your vermouth. Keep them in the refrigerator. Use this little vacuum. Keep them fresh. You don't want vermouth that's been open, sitting just out on your bar for 6 months. It will not be fresh. It will not taste good. Your cocktail will suck.
And Ali, you've been sold on the vacuum at this point, Ali. Yes, are you
the vacuum is great, and we do try to use it often. Usually the wine just gets flat out finished, but I'm gonna throw this out there. And vermouth, just so everyone knows, is essentially a type of wine, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's an aromatized wine. Yep.
It's an aromatized wine, and I'll give you a little advice if you have some vermouth and you're like, when's my next cocktail? Because it takes a certain kind of cocktail and really a mood to be using vermouth. Vermouth is excellent to make a pan sauce out of. So if you're looking to like do anything and like, oh, you need some, I mean, it's going to be different than just using wine. But I would certainly say, like, I've done recipes where I used vermouth and it makes fabulous, even just in cooking vegetables. I think I did a quick braise of, I'm forgetting the actual vegetable because vegetables, I like them, but yeah, it's great. Think about if you're ever doing a chicken breast, seems boring. You can always make it exciting with a nice pan sauce, especially with a little wine. That's when you're like, ooh la la. And vermouth makes for excellent deglazing if you're looking to make a nice little pan sauce and trying to get rid of that vermouth. So,
Yeah. And there's cool herbs in all the vermouths, wormwood and et cetera, et cetera. So there's other layers of flavor instead of just using a white wine. White wine
Nothing
is
says killer chicken like wormwood.
So 375s on the vermouth. I really wish they made 187s on vermouth, just so I'm not sitting around making cocktails every single night. It would be nice for a 187.
Hard to believe with your skills, Steve. Every night.
But here's another little hack. I'll use the word of the day, hack. Buy little bottles, airplane bottles for some of this stuff really work. For Campari, if you're not going to sit around and make a ton of Negronis and go through
right. That's actually a huge point, especially as you and if you guys like go through the old episodes and you're curious about a cocktail, if you can do those airplane bottles, it's a great way to be like, it's an easy investment there. Easy investment. It'll leave you a little bit more for your budget for elitist ice from Steve. He's buying ice on Amazon. Who knows where.
Everything oxidizes. Everything. Even whiskeys. I mean, if this were to sit around for, a year, 2 years, which it won't, it would taste different. Everything oxidizes. So
is that part of why they have a higher percentage than 80 proof often?
No, this is just so you can have barrel proof, which we're going to talk about again in a little bit because it's a part of the quality factor is your final proof. You can have barrel strength, which is basically they do not water back after aging, and it might come out at 51%. 47.
Call me a cab.
I interrupted. I'm sorry. You were
no. And then this, what it does is provide a final flavor. Final style is indicated by the proof. So we've done 3/4. I got 3/4 ounce of Campari, 3/4 ounce of Carpono Antica sweet vermouth. You could easily do 1 and 1. You could do a 1.5 to 1 to 1. I just want the bourbon to stand out a little bit more. And this was by committee. I made this for people and they said, oh, I like that recipe. I like that one better.
Does 3 ounces, is that the ideal amount for a martini style glass?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah. I think the Nick and Nora that I have is 4 ounces, I think.
4, okay.
Yeah. So now we need 1.5 ounces of bourbon. And there is no reason why you can't go up to 2 if you play around with your own recipe.
Well, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. It's going to be 2 next.
Yeah. It's a good time to point out if you do a search. So just type in whatever cocktail you want outside of a couple standard cocktails like a daiquiri or a margarita or whatever. Well, even then, because you can change the sweetness level, you will come up with 5 or 6 different ratio recipes just by doing a search. There is no standard. This is a lot of personal preference. There are guidelines, and the guidelines, like the vermouth and the Campari, should be the exact same. You don't want the sweet and the bitter out of whack.
Cool.
So I'm not going to stir a lot because I am going to pour it over ice. I'm just going to stir it a little bit to mix it, cool it down just a touch. I don't really want dilution. Here's the difference. If you are someone that's going to nurse this cocktail, you're going to want to stir this more, cool it down, get a touch of dilution, get it in balance, and use the Nick and Nora coupe glass with no ice. That way, as you're sipping, it's not diluting even more.
Right.
My cocktail's not going to last that long. It's not like I'm going to worry about extra dilution. Look at that color.
Wow.
You got color from the Campari, you got color from the sweet vermouth.
Can you just remind us what Campari is? I think we all know when it tastes, what it does to a drink. It just gives you that kind of like, ooh, it slows you down a bit, actually. But what is Campari?
Bitter liqueur. So Aperol, Campari, you could probably class them in the Amaros, Fernet. These are
but what is it made of?
Different proprietary herbs, a proprietary recipe that no one's going to tell you what it is.
So this is all herb booze, Fernet, Aperol, Campari. Yeah. It's like, hey, let's get hammered off wormwood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude.
These are all alpine liqueurs, basically. So
it is like pine tree and all that stuff.
Lee, I thought you were going to say Zima there for a second. I was
the Zima.
So I'm just using
them with Zima.
So my garnish is an orange. That's it. Get these oils out. Boom, throw it in the glass. This is the final cocktail.
Steve, let me ask some. Why is it orange peel works so darn good with whiskey? And I just want to say, I didn't do it because I didn't have an orange. I blew it when I did my old-fashioned hack, which I used maple syrup instead of simple syrup. And worked so well.
Good. It's
really?
It is new. Dang. It is so good. Sorry, Ali. Go ahead.
No, dude. That's what I really want to hear. But why is it orange? Orange works so well. Why do those oils? Why does that smell work so freaking well with whiskey? Because it just does.
Yeah, the citrusy notes, lemon and orange, just match up very well with the flavor components inside bourbon. And if you remember, rye provides a lemony or a dusty lemon flavor to it. So right there, the citrus notes, these are complementary. Whereas outside of Wisconsin people who throw olives in their old fashioned,
it's like seriously?
Yeah. It's a Wisconsin thing. And actually their old fashions are with brandy. Bad brandy, like Christian Brothers.
What kind of olives? Like just black?
Yeah, just little green olives.
Or green olives.
Yeah. You would never throw olives in any of these whiskey drinks outside of Wisconsin.
I can't believe I just heard what the hell you just said. And by the way, been to Wisconsin, been to Milwaukee. We did Cheap Eats there. I can tell you both. The show and also some places afterwards where I ate at. Great food scene. It was at a place that I put on Best Thing I Ever Ate, one at James Beard. Last year when I was at James Beard, this summer, but for 2022, I was like, you're Bavette? I put you guys on Best Thing I Ever Ate. And they're like, yeah, right on. I'm like, oh, you want a beard? Awesome too, right? Yeah. So great food scene. But I'm going to tell you something. Wisconsin, they like to drink. You know what I mean? They like to drink. It's a thing. We featured a bar that did some sort of deep fried Oreo thing, and it was called Drink Wisconsinably. Drink Wisconsinably. They have the most hilarious stuff on Instagram. They post really, really funny stuff, but it's when you told me that, it makes sense. And I don't know if it's because of Drink Wisconsinably, their humor and stuff, but olives and freaking cheap brandy old fashioned, obviously they're having 12, you know what I mean? It's cold as heck outside because that's what happens up in that great north. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You see these like uber comfort dishes, like hot dish, like tater tot casserole. And I remember being in Minneapolis going, "Can you explain this to me?" And the guy goes, "Spend a winter here." And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, when you're telling me this drink, I'm thinking like tailgate, Wisconsin Badgers, Green Bay, Brewers game, maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But I'm telling you, like, they like to drink over there, drink
Yeah.
Wisconsin. Big shout out. And I'm mortified, and yet I would try it.
I would try.
Oh yeah, I've had
I would
it.
try it.
I've had it. I got Wisconsin friends. I've had olives in a brandy old fashioned. But in this case, and in my case, I'm not.
He didn't. You know what's funny? He did not drop any opinion. Steve really just left that blank. I think we can assume what he really thinks.
Maybe it's from all the controversy on the chili talk from last week. From
Yes.
the 3-way, the 4-way,
The 5-way
We were,
chili spaghetti.
That's true.
Chili-
Oh, you're
yeah.
right. He's got no license to dog anything when he comes from the land of let's have chili on spaghetti. This is normal.
Yeah. So let's go back to quality factors, styles and quality factors.
Okay.
So yeast stain, we have no idea what they are. It's just obviously it's going to affect the final product. The mash bill that is created, that's going to affect the final product. Barrel, both the proof and the char. So char level is how long they burn the inside of the barrel because they set it on fire. If you remember from the very first episode, we talked about the laws of bourbon has to be in 100% new charred oak barrels. Well, to char it, you have to burn it. And, that's how long you're going to burn it. It depends on the char. And it really, that charcoal, how thick the charcoal gets.
Okay.
How deep the burn is. So like a level 1, which I don't even know if anybody uses, that's a 15-second burn. Most people are using a level 3, which I think, I wrote it down, 35-second burn.
Okay.
Level 4 goes up to a 55-second burn. If you remember, the charcoal itself, it's filtering the liquid and getting rid of impurities as it ages. So there is a
So wait,
reason.
help me understand this, because first of all, you're like, this thing's on fire. I'm picturing a bunch of black shit in my drink, like you know what I mean, like ash and crap. It's like licking my Weber grill after July 4th, July 5th. Hey, let's go lick the Weber grill. What the hell? You know what I mean?
It's charcoal.
How is this possible? Is the liquid actually in there? I mean, I understand the idea of imparting smoke as a flavor, but how does this not jack up the liquid? How do you burn it and not put a bunch of crap in there, like particles and stuff?
Well, you're filtering at the end after you take it out of barrel. Before it goes in the bottle, you filter. But the charcoal has a practical application. It's actually getting rid of impurities that came with the liquid from the still into the barrel. So
What kind of impurities? What is that?
I'm assuming more chemical references, just byproducts from distillation that are filtered out by the charcoal during the aging process.
I mean, we got charcoal filters on everything.
Yes.
There's charcoal toothpaste. I mean, I can't believe it, but it is a cleaning property.
Charcoal is good
weird.
for you. Yeah. And it is charcoal that's inside that barrel, and it totally changes the liquid. If you were to drink White Dog, which is the whiskey after it came off the still, it's clear. It is, it's fiery. It tastes like moonshine. You're going to get more of the sweetness and the spice at that point because it's just pure alcohol. Then it goes into barrel and it starts going. So if this orange, I didn't even plan this. This orange is a barrel. It's filled with the freshly made White Dog. Over the winters and the summers, because of temperature, humidity, all that, it's going to go in and out of the wood. The liquid will be inside the wood and go back out.
It'll
you're
like
gonna have-
leak. Will it leak?
Yeah. Oh, it's probably leaking, but the barrels themselves will seal up as the liquid is in here. The fire helps seal everything up. But
So
inside
then what's burning? The outside of it? So you put
the
the white
inside of the
dog.
barrel. Inside of the barrel.
They burn
So
the
How do
inside
you
before
burn it
add
if there's liquid in there?
okay. Well, no, you burn it before.
before.
You're doing
Okay,
all this
got it.
prep before.
That's
So
okay.
this is the barrel. You got a brand new barrel with no cap on either end. You have a guy with a fire right here. And this is open too, so the fire just goes straight up.
Oh,
through.
cool.
And
Wow.
you're burning it for 55 seconds for a char level 4. Somewhere around 35 to 40 is what people are burning at. Then you get all this flavor, practicality, and you're following the laws.
And
then
color, right? Isn't that how it goes
Color.
brown?
all the color comes from the barrel, all of it.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah, it's coming from the oak.
That's-
Yeah, it's
Just thought I'd point that out. It
inside the
struck me
steak.
as important, White Dog.
So-
Speaking of, I think Steve's nickname at one point in his life was White Dog.
So imagine this is a stave, a piece of wood that is forming the outside of the barrel. The liquid might go into that piece of wood about halfway in the aging process. It's also evaporating water because you have to go in at 125. So that's 62.5%. Over time, as it's aging, and if it ages for up to 10 years, well, it goes past 10 years, but say you have a 10-year-old aged bourbon, it might drop all the way down to 51% from 62.5 because the water in the liquid evaporated. So there's all that whole aging process really depends on the barrel, the quality of the wood, the char level, etc. So yeah, have that. You also have your proof. So has to go in at 125. Maker's Mark is the lowest proof in the barrel. So we're going to talk about Makers for a minute. No rye. Oh, before I go into Makers, let's talk about one other thing about the barrel.
White Dog.
So say you have 6 buildings that are aging. Say you got 6 buildings that are aging all of your bourbon barrels. One, you might have a 7th floor on the sunny side, facing south. It gets the hottest. It is evaporating the most. It gets the most leaching into the wood. That barrel will taste totally different than a north-facing, first floor, colder area barrel. Maker's Mark actually rotates their barrels through their rack houses so that they all age the same. No one else. I don't think anyone else does that. Maker's Mark does it. They have no rye. They rotate their barrels. They're going in at the lowest proof. These are all, it's all wheat outside of the corn. So you get very, very soft, gentle, round, easy bourbon from Maker's Mark.
I feel like that's what, and I mean, like I started, like before the old fashioned thing happened and before the speakeasy prohibition style bar thing came about. Also, I think it's good to point out how much White Dog rocked Ryan's world. For a while, I was like, he might just have to leave. I think he just got so rocked. I watched him it's like the pot brownie kicked in. I was like, he's gone. He is no longer participating. But something about Maker's Mark, it was the kind of the first whiskey I would drink. I remember I go to 3 of Clubs. Remember that bar off Vine Street or whatever in Hollywood?
Yeah.
And I just have that with ice, and it would just be I could get into it. You know what I mean? And this is back in my 20s when I was like, we're going out. You know what I mean? I'm waiting. Is it better be when I would be mad that last call was 2 a.m. back in those days, right? And Makers was something I could get with. You know what I'm saying? I could just have it. You could have it in volume, if you will. Kind of like your whiskey sling or sleen. You know what I mean? Something you could actually have multiples of. I would drink Makers because I was like, I could hang with it. Makers, it wasn't just a one and done. because
No.
I wasn't a one and done when I was 25. I was far from it.
Yeah.
From it.
And it's really soft. So it's always at 40%. It's going, it's not at, they might do 100 proof now, but the traditional Maker's Mark is
It's chill.
40%. It's 80 proof, not 100.
That's interesting. That's probably why a lot of people get into it, like sort of as I call it, the gateway sort of bourbon. Because I mean, Jack. I guess Jack used to be 80 proof at some point too, right? I know aren't they like 86?
Yeah.
Jack,
Well,
in the end of the day, Jack's lowbrow. I mean, I'll just say it. It's like kind of everywhere, and and it's obviously it's price point. Maybe lowbrow is a little more op-ed, but like Jack is cheaper straight up.
Yeah.
I think Maker's is like kind of a gateway bourbon, if you will.
Yeah. It's an easy bourbon for people.
Easy bourbon.
Now, let's talk about styles versus quality factors of other bourbons. So, Maker's Mark. Gentle, round, soft, easy. For those reasons. No rye, wheat. They rotate the barrels, very consistent, lowest proof going into barrel. They come into bottle at 80 proof. Woodford Reserve, totally different. High rye, not the really high rye like Four Roses, but high rye. It's I wrote it down, 18%. But they triple pot distill. So the original, and I'm only going to speak to the Lambert and Graham distillery, not the stuff they mix from Old Forester. So they do mix the Lambert and Graham distillery with stuff from the Louisville distillery, from Old Foe.
And this is Woodford we're talking about, right?
Woodford Reserve. They have a pot still. So if you remember, most people are doing column still for first run into a doubler or a thumper for the second distillation.
Okay. I love how you said, if you remember it. That's literally the stuff where I'm like, I have no idea what's happening, but I'll take your word for it. So triple pot still. Sounds like a move a ballerina would make.
They have pot stills, but everybody else does 2 distillations. You could almost get away with 1 distillation, but so much of the flavor comes from the second. The first gives you your proof. The second gives your flavor.
Second was a thumper. Is that what you said it was?
Well, a thumper is kind of a doubler pot still that they don't warm up. And as the hot liquid goes into it, it starts changing the metal and the metal thumps. So that's why it's called a thumper.
There you go. Glad I
They do.
Went right over my head. Ryan's like, thanks for explaining to me. And I'm like,
they do all pot stills at Woodford, but they distill 3 times. So if you distill an extra round, you get a very refined final product. Your White Dog coming out of Woodford at Lambert and Graham is really, it's really soft. It's easy, has a pure spice. Buffalo Trace, they do their main 2 styles. Blanton's and Elmer and Tealy are different because they're a traditional recipe. I think they were created for somebody else anyway. So let's remove those from the discussion. Buffalo Trace is a low rye recipe that affects the final product. You're not getting as much spice. You're getting a little more sweetness. And then your Pappy Van Winkles, your wheated, are your gentle and round and soft. Although I always find Pappy Van Winkle to be a little hot. It feels hot to me on the final product.
Can I ask you the $1 million question? Why anyone would really, I think why someone would just, top 5, if we're asking Steve Greer, the booze whisperer, a question related to bourbon. Is Pappy worth it?
Well, for sure it's not worth it now because these are the most expensive bourbons on the market. And that is solely because of the limited availability and the high demand. So supply and demand throws it out of whack. The prices you're getting for, I don't know, I think Pappy 12 might be $1,000 now.
Yeah, it's around 1,200 on the low end.
Yeah, I'm not spending that. I have bought Pappy before. I've drank Pappy before.
Wasn't it like $80 when you had it or something?
Yeah. I thought 15 was their best one.
Wow.
But when it reached a certain price point, I sold it. I'm like, well, I can't drink this. I did the same thing with Black Maple Hill. I mean, that used to be my house bourbon. It was $20 or $30 a bottle. That's some of the juice that came from Heaven Hill, supposedly, after the fire. And Kentucky bourbon distillers bought all that juice. They were supplying a lot of that juice for Black Maple Hill. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. When it reached $3.50 a bottle, I sold them. And I only had a bunch of it because it started reaching a point when a store got in their cases, it was gone in a week.
Already
So if you didn't buy 5-6 bottles, you were going to run out of it that year. You weren't going to have it.
Are not going to be in our blind tasting then, Steve. Is that what you're saying?
No. So I don't.
According to my Venmo to Steve, no.
Yeah. I think Pappy was fun and worth it, especially with the story because it's the grandson, post Stetzel Weller, et cetera, et cetera. When it was $80, $100, yes. $1,200 to Pappy 23 might be $25,000. Yeah, these are some of the most expensive bourbons in the world. So no, I don't think, because there are so many good bourbons on the market, and a couple of them I will never tell people they're my favorite because I want to be able to keep buying them.
All right.
Now, I used to
out of the show.
Yeah, I used to love Elmer T. Lee and Blanton's. I always bought Blanton's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now you can barely get it. I think I have 2 bottles. I haven't even opened them.
Steve, after you described all those notes a couple of minutes ago, you were really like going through all that, and that made me really pumped up to try our tasting that Ollie and I are going to do.
That's true, man. That's
really
gonna be wild.
I've worked really hard at the ones that we are going to taste.
Okay,
are all specifically for a reason, in style differences, etc., price points, all that jazz.
I can't wait.
I cannot. In fact, I had to go drive 40 minutes north to find the last bottle. So I got it.
Okay.
Dedication.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And so I'll be getting them out to you hopefully midweek. I'll ship them out.
Now, Steve, I want to mention too that I might not be able to tell what I like after only 2 or 3 sips. So, pack it in there. Let's just get a nice glasses for us.
Well, and what I really just want you to do, and we'll talk about it before the show or before the tasting starts. There's no right or wrong answer on these.
Okay, right.
These are chosen for style differences.
Yeah.
For you to decide what is Ryan's style of bourbon. What's his favorite?
Wow.
Because I want you guys to be able to know what your style is.
You down and let you try the bourbons and be like, which one do you like? You just start sort of buying brands that you hear about or whatever your friend has or whatever. So I think it's really cool. The blind thing is going to be awesome.
It's going to be a blast. And you know what? The easiest way for people to find their style? Start going to whiskey bars or a bar that has a whole bunch of bourbon and do flights. Now, you have to find the right bartender because bartenders will tend to give you the flight of their favorites and not 3 or 4 completely stylistically different whiskeys. What can happen is post final episode of this show, when you see the ones I chose, you can go to a bar and say, I want you to do this, 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 and this. I want to participate in this.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, there is something, I think what's really fascinating about this is because obviously it is a lot to digest.
Yeah.
pardon the pun, right? About understanding bourbon. But just to even, I almost wish when I went to a store, they would group the bourbon not by price, but by style. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they clump it all together. So you're like, okay, this is all the sweet stuff. This is all this stuff. What's all that stuff? And even just understanding it already puts something in my brain about what I'm now looking for. Because, if I'm making an old fashioned, I'm adding sweetness. So
Yeah.
I don't want a Buffalo Trace because that's a sweeter bourbon. But what's funny is how many times have I had a Buffalo Trace old fashioned?
Yeah.
A ton. Obviously,
Yeah.
because the price is right. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'd
Yeah.
probably reach for the 100 proof Old Faux to kind of offset that. I almost think rye makes it for a better old fashioned because of the spice forwardness, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot, all the cocktails that we've made this season, you can easily substitute rye.
Right.
We chose bourbon for this episode instead of American whiskey just because it's such a broad topic. It's easier to hone in on one, just bourbon.
Yeah.
The differences with rye are really the final recipe and where it comes from. There's a lot of people that just buy juice from that company over in Indiana called MGP who produces a lot of rye. I think a lot of Diageo rye still comes out of that distillery. They're not producing it themselves. If you go to someone who is producing it themselves, high rye so it has to be 51%. If you can get something that's 95 or 100% rye, it's very, very unique. So that's it on rye. It's still the same parameters. It's new barrels. It's heavy char. It's aged. Go with someone that produces their own and try to find a high rye recipe. Outside of that, this subject, the bourbon subject, is far more diverse than rye. That's why we chose just bourbon.
And it's bourbon. Everyone's down for it.
This Boulevardier
I
is
was
amazing.
just going to say, Steve, how is that drink over there? I feel like you are on your way to the moon already.
Yeah. Well, it's very, very good.
That's good.
Yeah. That first sip, I was like, oh my God.
And so, amazing. Steve, remind us of the name of this drink again.
Boulevardier. We'll post, you know what? I'll write out the recipe and the name and we'll put it, I'll send it over to you, Ryan. We'll put it on Instagram.
Okay, cool.
I'll take a photo. I won't drink this whole thing, or at least I'll wait until I take some photos.
Good point. Yeah, you know what? I feel like we should probably close on what the eat this will be. And I'm going to say it. I'm at a loss. I don't know what I'd have with the Negroni or even just what Campari obviously is going to dominate the conversation of the food.
Fried.
What's that?
Fried food.
Yeah, I like that. Fried food. You know what? This, and Ali, I only mention it because you went to that steakhouse in New York. I believe it was
Gage and Tollner. Yeah.
Yeah. You had a double rye, so two different types.
It was rye and bourbon. It had wild turkey and it had two, rye and bourbon in the old fashioned.
Old fashioned. This would be a fantastic steak cocktail.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any kind of steak? I mean, is there a specificity we can kind of chime in here on?
Go full bore porterhouse, heavy, not black and blue, but pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bistecca Fiorentina. I mean, you made me think about that. Like a rare
with some olive oil drizzled on top. This will go really well with it, especially that sweet vermouth.
What about a blackened ribeye? I'm trying to create, because steak's broad. You know what I mean? Like filet mignon is so different. Let's talk steaks here. So Bistecca Fiorentina, Cajun, that Tuscan steak, right? Or
Cajun blackened ribeye. Cajun spices, blackened ribeye with this.
So let
with
me
the
ask you this though. I think one of the, for beef lovers, steak lovers, a lot of people will be like, oh my God, serve it to me raw. Some people, if they go this route, they'll be like, serve it to me raw. But I think there's a case to be made about steaks peaking at different temps, right? So
Yeah.
Ribeye, I think you can make a case that medium's the way to go because you're
I
actually
agree.
rendering more fat out of that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, so I totally believe in medium on ribeye because otherwise, if you go rare, medium rare, it's gristly. That fat didn't cook down. Unless you have some stupid, way of cooking that's at like 3,000 degrees that renders all that fat really quickly. I think ribeye is best at medium. I like New York strips at medium rare. A blackened strip, and this would be really good. Traditionally, these drinks, so Amaro-based drinks, or Amari-based drinks, if you want to call the whole category, which is a bitter liqueur, are always after dinner drinks by themselves. You might even have this with you could have this with dessert. Easily have this with dessert.
That's cool. That's very good to know.
Yeah.
Boulevardier, Bourbon Negroni. Good stuff, man. Damn. Yeah. I got it. This is a good one. Thank you,
Steve.
I thought you guys would like this. Oh, I got to stop drinking that.
Yeah, right.
I got to take photos.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For the last 4 minutes, we're going to stage an intervention on Steve for one drink.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome, guys.
Today, again, you guys, please check out, we have an Eat This, Drink That YouTube channel. We are on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok at ETDT Official. So the acronym of our show, ETDT Official. Go join us over there. This is where we promote stuff. And thank you for joining us on the Fireside.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Thank you for all our new followers. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, happy Saturday. Steve, I think yours is starting off a little bit happier than ours, but Ryan and I will always catch up. That's what we do.
Let's just see what the Buckeyes score is when I turn this game on because it was.
Oh, snap. It is college game day. And you know what? For some of us who are invested in baseball, my wife's a Phillies fan. We could be looking at a clincher of the World Series tonight, or we could be getting the greatest gift of all in October, a 7-game World Series.
Yeah.
Greatest gift we can get. 7-game World Series. Exactly. I'm going for a 7-game World Series.
Yes. All right, guys. I'll see you next week. I can't wait to see what you're cooking, Ali.
Oh, yeah. I've got some thoughts. Ciao, everybody. Arrivederci.